There is a gas you cannot see, smell, or taste, rising silently out of the ground under millions of homes right now. It is radioactive. It is the second most common cause of lung cancer on Earth, after smoking, and the #1 cause in people who never smoked a day in their lives. And whether it seeps into the house you're about to buy was decided millions of years ago by the rock beneath the plot. Most buyers never check. Most sellers never mention it. In some countries, it's mapped street by street. In most, it's invisible in every sense. I read land for a living. The data under it, across dozens of countries, and I'm going to show you how to know, before you sign, anywhere in the world. This is radon, the hazard written into the geology, and the one question that reveals it on any plot on Earth. Here's the mental model, and it's simpler than the fear around it. Deep in many rocks sits a trace of uranium, completely normal, present almost everywhere in small amounts. As it decays, step by step, it produces radon, a gas. Gas doesn't stay put. It works its way up through cracks and pores in the soil toward the surface. Outdoors, it disperses into the air and is basically harmless. The problem is only this. A building sitting on top acts like a cup turned upside down over that rising gas, and a warm building gently sucks soil air in through every gap in the floor. So radon isn't about your house being dirty. It's about what's under it and how the building breathes. Hold that picture. The first thing to break is the idea that radon is a property defect, something a bad builder did. It isn't. Two identical houses, built by the same crew, on the same street, can have completely different radon levels because the rock beneath them is different. Radon is a land problem that happens to surface inside buildings. The driver is geology. Certain granites, some dark shales, and karst limestone carry more uranium and let more gas through. Sandy, fractured ground lets it travel. Dense clay can trap it. Which means the single most useful thing you can know about radon, you can know before the house even exists, from the geology of the plot. This is exactly why it belongs in a land checklist and not a home inspection afterthought. The home inspection finds it once you already own the problem. The geology tells you the odds before you've spent a cent. And that reframe, from test my house to read my land, is the whole point of this channel. The decision that matters most happens before you buy, not after. Now the showcase, what the best available data actually looks like. Several countries have done something remarkable. They've surveyed radon across the whole territory and published radon potential maps, the ground colored by how likely a building there is to exceed safe levels. Parts of the UK, Ireland, much of the EU under the Euratom Directive, the US through the EPA, they've turned an invisible gas into a layer you can look up by address. At its best, this data is granular enough to tell you that one valley is a hotspot and the ridge above it is clean. That's genuinely powerful. You can stand on a plot, pull the map, and get a real probability before you commission a single test. And here's the standard everyone's measuring against. The World Health Organization and the EU set a reference level of 300 becquerels per cubic meter. The US EPA acts at 148. Those numbers are the line between fine and do something. But, and this is the honest part, that beautiful map stops at the border. Cross into the next country, and very often the layer simply doesn't exist, which is where most of the planet actually lives. So here's the signature problem and the portable fix. Your country almost certainly does not publish a street-level radon map. Most don't. But radon risk is geology, and geology is mapped almost everywhere. So here's the proxy you can find anywhere on Earth. First, pull the National Geological Survey sheet for the plot. Nearly every country has one, often free. Look for the high-risk rock types: granite, uranium-bearing shales, karst limestone. If your plot sits on those, treat it as elevated by default. Second, and this is the one question that cuts through everything. Asterisk, has anyone ever measured the radon here? And can I see the number in becquerels? Asterisk, ask the seller, ask the agent, ask the local authority. If the answer is no, that's not reassurance. That's a blank you fill yourself, because a radon test is one of the cheapest pieces of certainty in the entire buying process. A small passive detector costs about the price of a dinner, sits in the room for a few months, and gives you a hard number against that 300 line. No map? No problem. Geology for the odds, a €30 test for the truth. That combination works on every plot on the planet. Now the detail that turns this from trivia into something that matters. Radon and smoking don't just add together, they multiply. For a non-smoker, elevated radon raises lung cancer risk by a real but modest amount. For a smoker living in the same high radon house, the combined risk isn't the two added up, it's dramatically higher than either on its own. The two hazards amplify each other. That's why the public health framing can feel confusing. Second leading cause overall, first among never smokers. Both are true, and the synergy is why. For never smokers, radon is often the single biggest lung cancer risk they'll ever face, and most have never heard the word. Why does this belong in a video about land? Because it changes how seriously you take a high potential plot. If anyone in the household smokes, a radon hotspot isn't a box to tick. It's a genuine reason to test before you commit, and to budget for mitigation if the number comes back high. The land sets the exposure. The household sets the stakes. You want to know both before you sign, not after you've lived there 10 years. Here's the part that should lower your blood pressure. Of all the invisible hazards a plot can carry, radon is one of the most fixable. Because the gas comes from below and the building sucks it in, the fix is almost elegant. You flip the airflow. A pipe runs from beneath the floor slab to a small fan, and instead of the house drawing gas up into the rooms, the system draws it out from under the slab and vents it safely above the roof, where it disperses to nothing. Engineers call it sub-slab depressurisation, and in most homes it drops radon by the large majority, often back under the line entirely. On a new build, it's even easier and cheaper. You lay a simple gas barrier and a stub of pipe while the foundation is open, and the protection is basically free insurance. So radon is not a reason to walk away from a plot. It's a reason to know, because if you know before you buy, you can price the fix in, design it out, or simply confirm there's nothing to fix. The danger was never the gas. The danger is buying blind. Now let me show you where radon quietly concentrates, the situations people don't expect. First, basements and lower ground rooms. Radon is heaviest and most concentrated nearest the source, so the basement bedroom or the converted lower ground office is exactly where it pools. That dream plot with a build-in to the slope basement, worth an extra look. Second, fractured and faulted ground. It's not just which rock, it's how broken it is. Cracks and old fault lines are highways that let gas travel up faster, so two plots on the same granite can differ if one sits over a fracture zone. Third, and this one's counterintuitive, the modern, airtight, energy-efficient house. The better sealed the building is, the less fresh air dilutes whatever seeps in. So radon can actually concentrate higher in a beautifully insulated new home than a drafty old one. Our push for efficiency can quietly trap the gas. None of this is a reason for fear. It's a reason to match the plot's geology to the building's design, slope, basement, fault, airtightness, and to test once you're in. The land and the house have to be read together. Step back, and radon tells you something about data itself. The gas is everywhere. It rises out of the ground on every continent, under rich plots and poor ones alike. The physics is universal, but the map of it is wildly uneven. A handful of countries have surveyed their whole territory and can tell you your risk by postcode. Most of the world has nothing, not because the hazard is absent, but because nobody funded the survey. This is the asymmetry this whole channel keeps running into. The danger is global, the data is local, and the gap between them is where people get hurt. But notice the escape hatch radon hands you. Even where the radon map is blank, the geology map almost never is, and geology is the thing that drives the risk. So you're never truly in the dark. The richest country's radon map and the poorest country's geology sheet are pointing at the same underlying rock. You just read the best layer available, wherever you are, and you fill the rest with a cheap test. That's not a workaround. That's the entire discipline of buying land well. So back to where we started, the invisible gas under the floor. Here's the honest version. Radon is not a freak event or a rare curse. It's a normal, predictable consequence of ordinary geology, and it's sitting under a meaningful slice of the world's homes right now. What separates the people who get hurt from the people who don't isn't luck. It's whether they looked, whether they read the rock before they bought, asked the one question, and spent 30 euros on certainty. The hazard is invisible. The risk is not. It's written in the geology, and the geology is almost always available, even when the radon map isn't. So next time you stand on a plot you love, don't just look at the view. Look down at what the ground is made of, and at whether anyone has ever put a number to the air inside. Because the most important thing about a piece of land is almost never the thing you can see. Quick honest note. This is educational, not survey or medical advice. For a real decision, get a proper test and a local professional. And pulling the best available layer for any market, the radon map where it exists, the geology where it doesn't, that's literally the tool I built. It's called Parcella, it's mine, and the link's in the description. If reading land like this is your kind of thing, stick around, the channel is full of it. See you in the next one.